It is a pleasure to have you with us here for the beginning of our very first day. I'm Luke Antonio, Senior Editor at Smart Cities World, and I will be your host over the next few days, where we have some fantastic keynotes, panels, and case studies for you to jump into. First, I'd like to really quickly echo the thoughts of our CEO, Chris, just now. We're in the middle of an emergency where cities really are on the front line, and action to combat the changing climate has never been as urgent as it is now. And our aim over the next few days, both here online and in London tomorrow, is to support cities in plotting a route forward, navigating this minefield of policy, financial and technological decisions that they're going to have to make in the coming years. A huge part of our being able to do that is those of you watching online in the audience, and we really want our panel discussions to be lively and interactive. So we're really keen on hearing from you, understanding what your challenges are, and see if we can't help you to find some solutions to those issues in real time. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a chat icon. If you click that, it'll open up our public chat function where you can send us your thoughts and questions for speakers as we go. So please do send them in as we go through all of our brilliant sessions over the next few days. For those who have joined live, if you miss anything today or Thursday, you'll be able to watch everything back on demand at your leisure. So take a look through the agenda, bookmark the sessions you don't want to miss, even if you can't catch them live. So without any further ado, let's jump into our opening keynote for today and for the summit with a very special guest. We are delighted to be joined by Mami Mizutori, Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, the perfect opening speaker for us and our agenda over the next few days to talk about the key to building climate resilience. So Mami, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to hand straight over to you to kick things off.
Well, thank you very much, Luke Antonio. Dear city leaders, movers, and shakers for enhanced local resilience, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank Smart Cities World for this opportunity to speak at your city's Climate Action Summit, which is bringing municipalities together to inspire, as your CEO said, climate action. In today's world, disaster impacts cascade across geographies and sectors. And it's a combination of many things. The climate emergency, of course, but also the COVID-19 pandemic, increasing inequality, degradation of environment, etc., etc. And it is a long list of interconnected systemic risks, and the impact of disasters on resilience and sustainability is perceived and felt first and most in the cities and the communities. Now, against this backdrop, next month, member states and all other stakeholders, including, of course, local governments, will convene at the United Nations General Assembly for a high-level meeting on the midterm review of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. At the midpoint of this 15-year-long blueprint for resilience, the findings from this review makes for rather sober reading. It calls for a major course correction if we are truly serious in our efforts to prevent and reduce the impacts and losses from disasters. The report reveals that since 2015, when the Sendai Framework was adopted unanimously by all member states, but also with the participation of many cities, the number of people affected by disasters has increased by 80%. It also details how disasters cost the global economy more than $520 billion every year. And the most eye-opening part of this report is that although we use and hear the two words natural disasters frequently, actually, I must tell you, there is nothing natural about these disasters. Disasters are the result of our activities, human activities, the choices we make, and their impacts are brutally unequal, with communities and cities in developing countries being hit the hardest. And this is why at this high-level meeting in New York, the General Assembly is set to adopt a political declaration calling for much greater action to prevent and reduce disaster risk in every decision, action, and investment we make, and the need to enhance resilience at the local level. We expect this to come out very strongly in this political declaration. Achieving this dramatic course correction requires taking risk into account in everything, the way we live, work, consume, build, educate ourselves, and invest. National and local governments will have to be in the lead of such efforts, and today I would like to share with you some of the major shifts that need to happen. First, we need to address together, not in silos, the entire landscape of current and emerging hazards and risks. This includes, of course, the climate-related risks and geophysical risks like earthquakes, tsunamis, but the environmental hazard. We saw about pollution in the opening video, technological hazards, big accidents, incidents, biological hazards, pandemics and epidemics, and risks. They need to be addressed together. We have to stop trying to tackle a hazard, a risk in isolation. And we certainly have learned that this is not viable from our experience with COVID, when risk was manifesting itself in a systemic way and cascading way, and disasters were compounding. Second, we must put people at the heart of all our efforts to build resilience. The Sendai Framework, this is a truly people-centered document. And one of the most important principles of this document is that for its full implementation, we need what is called the whole of society approach, engaging all stakeholders. In particular, we need to empower those who are many times labeled as vulnerable, when actually our societies are making them vulnerable, including girls and women, persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and we need to bring them to the table where decisions and policies around prevention, preparedness are made, and their voices must be firmly incorporated into them. Third, we need to address short-termism and market failures through correct pricing, accounting, and disclosure of the risks that surround us. As long as short-termism prevails in the decision-making of all sectors, public, private, and also the civic sector, ignoring the price we will eventually pay by not investing in prevention, we will never get out of what we call the vicious cycle of disaster, response, recovery, reconstruction, and disaster once again. We will always be running around, responding from one disaster to another. And we know that this approach is no longer viable because the gap between the increasing humanitarian need after every disaster and what is actually provided, even with the most generous of considerations, this gap is becoming larger and larger. We need to stop this vicious cycle. And fourth, we must work harder to ensure access to disaster risk information and greater public participation so that the communities and businesses can make better decisions to define their own future. Now, such an all-encompassing approach is the kind of paradigm shift called for in the UN flagship report on risk, which is titled the Global Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction 2022. And it is the title of 2022 is specifically Our World at Risk, Transforming Governance for a Resilient Future. One immediate avenue of action with very tangible results is to scale up the number of multi-hazard, effective, and inclusive early warning systems across the world to protect lives and livelihoods. Cities around the world know too well that these early warning systems act as a critical defense against many hazards, floods, droughts, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. At last year's COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres He launched the Early Warnings for All plan. He launched the Early Warnings for All Initiative Action Plan. And this is about every person on Earth to be covered by these early warning systems by the year 2027. The success of this initiative is crucial because still 1/3 of the world's population are not covered by early warning systems. And most of these people live in the urban areas of least developed countries, small island developing states, and landlocked developing states. Right now, when extreme weather events are becoming more common around the world, this means that hundreds of millions of people are being put in harm's way, and this is simply unacceptable. The action plan of this Early Warning for All initiative has a price tag of $3.1 billion to implement. And perhaps at first glance, you might think this is a lot of money. But let's consider that this is the equivalent of just 50 cents per person per year for the next 5 years. Prioritizing early warning for all should be seen as more of an investment in resilient and sustainable development rather than a cost. And this applies to everything we put into prevention. It's not a cost, it's an investment. UNDRR, my organization, is co-leading this initiative within the UN system with the World Meteorological Organization. We are also working with IFRC, ITU, and many other UN agencies. Now, furthermore, in order to scale up climate and disaster resilience at the local and urban level, we, with many other partners, including ICLEI, UCLG, Resilient Cities Network, and C40, we launched Making Cities Resilient 2030 in 2020. MCR 2030, as we call it, is a decade-long global collaboration to support local governments around the world to prevent and reduce their climate and disaster risk. Since its beginning, the initiative has mobilized more than 1,500 local governments from 74 countries and territories with a combined population of over 470 million. Each of these municipalities has made a commitment to reduce their climate and disaster risk. And among these municipalities, 21 of these local governments, they have been recognized as what we call MCR 2030 Resilience Hub. And this is because of their focus, advanced level, and leadership on risk reduction and urban resilience. These resilient cities are across the world, regions, and include the hosts of both COP27 and COP28, which are Sharm el-Sheikh and Dubai, respectively. These hubs are expected to play an important role to inspire greater ambition for resilience among other local governments, and importantly, to provide peer support for building resilience of other cities, not only in their countries or in their regions, but also globally. Let me briefly reference just 2 examples of MCR 2030 hubs in action. First, Greater Manchester in the UK has prioritized the development of green spaces and waterways that are both attractive and protective in equal measures. In January of 2021, these urban green pastures slowed runoff from the heavy rainfall of Storm Christoph that otherwise would have threatened to overwhelm the city's flood defenses. A second example is the city of Incheon in the Republic of Korea, continuing to work to reduce the impact of severe summer heat waves. Incheon City has taken a series of measures to mitigate high temperatures, including the opening of several new parks to lower surface temperatures and increase access to shade, focusing support on areas and communities most at risk where there is vulnerability, and moving ahead with plans to plant 30 million trees in the near future. These are only 2 examples, but there are many more, and I would like to make an appeal to the cities mayors joining this summit to please join this, because the more we are, the stronger we are. And in closing, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Smart Cities World for organizing this important summit. We believe that risk can be reduced. We believe that disasters do not have to devastate. And to do that, we must ensure that every decision, action, investment we make in sustainable future for the world's billions of urban dwellers. And this summit is a strong initiative with a firm resolve to change words into action towards this goal with solutions and inspiration. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mami. That's an incredible scene setter to kick things off for us. And we really appreciate your kind words. It's a really stark reminder of what's at stake here and the necessity for an all of society approach and solution to the climate crisis. Short-termism has been rife in our decision making, and the need to take a longer term view that is both more equitable and more inclusive is really the only way that we can reduce the impact of these disasters when they do occur, and improve the way we adapt and recover from them in some of the ways that you've just referenced. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been fantastic having you on. We are wrapping up our keynote here with Mami, but we will be back online just a couple of minutes' time with our first panel discussion of the summit, progress and next steps for current climate action plans. So do stay with us. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes' time. And as we've said, get involved, use the chat, and we'll see you in a few moments. Thank you all very much.